When thinking about demons and demonic forces, the one word that comes to mind is chaos. Unbound, unpredictable, and absolutely dreadful with its cascading destruction. This is how man chooses to define the entropic forces of the natural world around us. It is by giving these moments a shape, a face, a story, characteristics, do we begin to unravel the weave of reality itself. Human history is full of these stories of people trying to understand and give symbols a meaning. And it's in these symbols that we encode emotions and knowledge. So, what is the Nalfeshnee trying to convey? A powerful hulking brute originating from Dungeons and Dragons. A tall, lumbering demon that combines the most vile aspects of a pig and a gorilla. Possessing powerful magical abilities, telekinesis, and the ability to summon lesser demons, their services can be acquired for the right price. The pig is associated with abundance, adaptability, disease, and greed, while the gorilla is the closest representation of humanity and nature, unspoiled by the sins of society. This doesn't mean that the gorillas aren't territorial, vicious, or downright deadly sometimes. Even so, the death of one of its kind is always marked as a great sorrow. So taking all of that into account, the Nalfeshnee is the embodiment of a violent, greedy, malicious, and surprisingly not fully disease-ridden monster. There is room for that in its design, but since it wasn't a focal point, I won't harp on about it anymore. The second edition depicts a decisively more hog-like head. As you'll see later on, this is something I also considered. Afterwards, the design pretty much locked in and hasn't changed much over the years. Starting out, I want to combine the most grotesque aspects that come to my mind when I read the description. So immediately I went for a humanoid looking gorilla-ish head with a pig nose, oversized ears, hulking arms, and cloven hooves, while also beefing up the abdominal muscles to show that this is a creature with immense strength. Moving forward with the second design, I knew I wanted a battle-ready stance. I knew I wanted something dynamic in the composition. To this end, I tried giving it a gorilla-ish stance. Ready to roar, ready to pump its chest, ready to fight, that sort of thing. On the topic of its chest, however, I wanted to play around a bit with exposed muscle and tendons. Just something about seeing a skinless monster making it even more scary. Toning back the abdominal muscles in lieu of body fat, I wanted to try to emulate the jiggle physics of a hulking brute running towards you. At this point, I also ditched the gorilla hands in lieu of claws covered in fur. The cloven-style hooves were also reworked in lieu of something closer to a bird of prey, but still transfigured in a demonic way. Amping up the skinless and bare bones look, this is the first time I looked at hog skulls and started expanding what would constitute a pig. There is a different design that would benefit from this uncanny looking tusk distribution, but this just wasn't it. A feature that appeared here for the first time would make its way all the way to the finished product, and that is the wing design. I knew that since the wings were described as vestigial and not something that would actually hold up the weight, I wanted to try and make them look like chicken wings. At this point I was fairly certain I had the final design on my hands, so I went around and rendered it a lot more. In terms of muscle placement, it still left a lot to be desired. And in a way, that's why I did not stop with this design. I knew I had to keep pushing forward. After working on several minor designs, I came up with this guy and I was really happy with how he looked. I was especially happy with the many plentitudes of eyes dotting his body. I thought it would be really terrifying if in the muscle folds you could see moving eyes staring at you wherever you were. And then I recalled that yes, while these creatures are judges of hell and their perceptive abilities should be taken into account, justice is often depicted as blind. So this wouldn't work for the Nalfeshnee. Now, this guy is a goofy goober, and I absolutely love him. I wanted to mix up my approach here, and give him the attributes of a monster from a children's book. Like, when you look at his floppy ears and his mismatched proportions, he does look goofy. Now imagine those same goofy eyes tearing your party limb from limb. I still love him very much though. Personal favorite. And here we are at final design number 1. Why is it final design number 1? Because there's also final design number 2 and final design number 3. In this version, I felt like I had all the elements exactly where I wanted them. I had the gorilla-like feet, I had the hog-like tusks, and it was a disgusting sack of flesh slopping around with some muscles exposed here and there. And I thought, this was good. This is good. So why didn't I wrap this up and call it a day? Well, to put simply, something was itching me at the back of my mind saying that maybe I should come back to it. A part of me is still not satisfied. At this point, I started to re-examine what the creature meant and what it was supposed to represent. Judges of hell, monstrous entities that are malicious to all beneath them. The idea of royalty started creeping back in, so I felt it appropriate to add a crown, or at least a deformed piece of jewelry that would resemble one. And just to make sure that the monster was still frightening, I gave him a more humanoid skull, beefed him up, and just tried to present him as regal in some way. Now that I'm warmed up, we need a little action, we need some dynamic poses. We need it charging through a portal, showing just how scary it can be. I was seriously considering how to combine the symbols of opulence and wealth in our world and present them on the creature. I felt like this guy was nicely coming along, but something about having part of its body completely hidden and making it inseparable from the background was an idea that I didn't really like. So I moved on. Bringing back the belly and giving it a playful jiggle was my attempt to reintroduce some humor into the design. I was aiming for a slightly uncanny approach as this creature hobbles towards you. I would eventually ditch the royalty aspect altogether, which doesn't mean that I'm not open to the idea of an Nalfeshnee king at some point in the future. The next several designs were more of a push and pull between the amount of muscularity versus fat I was trying to display on the creature. The interplay between the hog and gorilla elements, as well as trying out different poses that would show it off. So now we're approaching a manifestation of this creature that satisfies almost all of my criteria. Gorilla-esque, big face, obviously demonic, bulbous, imposing, in an action pose showcasing its teleportation, or rather, it being teleported to a summoning circle. And yet still, for my tastes, it felt a bit too run-of-the-mill. I played around with its form a bit more, trying to reintroduce the fun and jiggly motions I mentioned previously with the royalty design. But the more I tried to stray, the more a part of me tried to push it back to a safe spot with the design of the head. Several more minor sketches dot the path between here and the point that I realized I really want to showcase this creature coming out of a portal. The whole mythos of summoning a demon under your control was an idea that I was really drawn towards. And in this version, it charging, breaking an incomplete summoning circle, potentially going to kill the summoner, was an idea I really enjoyed. So now we get to this guy who pretty much ticked all my boxes. I even got so far as to render him fully and color him. So why didn't I like it? It lost some of its gorilla aspects along the way, besides the feet, and it felt pretty much like a simple pig demon, and I wasn't happy with that. By this point, the fatigue was setting in, and having brought 2 full pieces to completion and not liking either of them was just a little bit disheartening. So now I was back at it again, but amping up the gorilla muscularity a lot more. This went through a couple of iterations until I was finally satisfied. For real this time. Really. And so here we are at the last guy himself. This guy clicked because he could be a feature in a standalone manner or as part of the scene he was designed for. Standing tall as a symbol of greed, destruction and opulence, I thought it appropriate to add a corpse, riches and food to help lure in the creature. As well as making use of several cursed weapons. You never know when they can come in handy. There are several designs that I glossed over or didn't mention at all because I didn't have a lot to say, but they were absolutely instrumental in getting me from point A to point Z. And that's about it. Would you use this creature in your campaign? Would you change something about it? Please let me know in the comments. For now, I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.